All ready to go? Tonight's work session. Tonight we have business administrator, human resources, information technology, law department, and the Bureau of Treasury. Eileen, would you like to start?
Absolutely, Councilman, and thank you everyone for having us here tonight. It's the third night we're here, and this will be the wrap-up of the city's budget. So I'll start off from the BA's office, going through the revenue highlights. Matt Domines will chime in when he feels the necessary need to do so. Real estate tax. So overall, this city's real estate assessed valuation has been steadily declining, as you know, over the past several years. This year, with the anticipated sale of Commonwealth Health to the nonprofit Woodbridge, we expect an estimated decrease in 2025 of the assessed value of $12.9 million. This decrease in taxable assessed value will decrease the city's real estate revenue next year by $835,000. We had discussed this in the initial meeting we had with the mayor. Our refuse fee, since 2021, and the city put the refuse fee collection together with the tax bills, we have seen increasingly significant return collection rate on that. So the city's rate again in 2025 will remain $300 as it has been. We anticipate that the amount to be collected in 2025 is $6.5 million. We will anticipate a slight decrease in the delinquent refuse collection because we have seen continued efforts on that part, and the body of delinquent refuse fees is declining. Real estate transfer tax. Our real estate transfer tax has continued to benefit from the city's robust real estate market. We anticipate that this will continue given the housing shortages and the lack of affordable housing nationwide. The city has collected $3.2 million in transfer tax as of September of 2024. So we anticipate for 2025 a budgeting $5.9 million. Our earned income tax, again, has steadily increased over the past few years, in part due to economic growth nationwide and growth in the number of businesses downtown. If you recall, we had a significant increase in the last 2 years of business startups in the city. In 2023, the unaudited total of EIT was $34.6 million. In our budget for 2025, we will continue to see growth in collections, and we anticipate $35.9 million in collections. Payroll tax, as with the other taxes, has continued to see growth in collection, both in current and delinquent collections. The city has collected $1.2 million through September of this year. As the city's in its third year of leveling this tax, we budgeted $2.7 million in current collections and a slight increase in delinquent collections of $520,000. As you recall, the city this year refinanced its general obligation series 2016 notes. Through this refunding, the city has realized a net debt service of $2.1 million, almost $2.2 million. And again, we talked about this the evening the mayor was here. Through our work with our financial institutions, working with them to renegotiate our interest rate, moving a significant portion of our general fund to Pliget, the city has yielded $1 million of interest this year, which is a significant jump over previous years. So we'll talk a little bit now, if we move. There we go. Expenditures. So this year we're adding 5 new provisional police officers into the 2025 budget. Each police officer, if you include their salary, health care, the equipment outfitting, educational bonus, and Social Security, that number per officer is $121,000. We anticipate our health care to increase by 5.5% this year, but we are on track to, and I'm sure Ms. Pikulski will have more on this, to save over $4 million in health care avoidance costs in the past 4 years. Our workers' comp, as we are self-insured, the Department of Labor and Industry annually requires us to have a minimal amount of funding in our accounts. In 2024, the required minimal funding was $3 million. Now in 2025, that required minimum has increased to $3.9 million. Our debt service obligation will decrease slightly in 2025, down to $10.6 million, or a decrease of $159,000. The city does not contemplate any new borrowing in 2025. In 2022, the city opened the OPEB Trust. This is to address the unfunded city liability of other post-employment benefits. The liability in 2022 was $157 million. In 23, the city deposited $2 million into the OPEB Trust and made a $200,000 contribution to the trust in 2024. The city believes that it's in its best interest of the city to keep its attention focused on this unfunded liability and will be transferring $300,000 to the OPEB Trust in 2025. This has been an important factor when we're reviewed by evaluators such as S&P to know that we are attempting to address that huge unfunded liability. As we discussed at previous meetings, our MMO has decreased this year. So our city MMO this year is $9.7 million. This is a decrease of $8.6 million. The decrease was due to a 40-year pension amortization that the city entered into with the Commonwealth that ended December 31st of 2024. The city also reduced its pension debt discount, or its pension discount rate this year from 7.25% to 6.5%. This decrease will bring projection returns for our pension investments closer to the actual pension investment returns and mitigate the impact of market fluctuations on the pension market values. Now I'm in trouble. Hang on, tech alert.
They brought the IT guy.
Just one thing on the OPEB trust too, in the trust that has, the city is paying the annual cost for that, for the financial advisor, the custodian, and the audit, which we are finishing up, which is a separate OPEB audit, which is about $25,000 a year. But that is to help build up the corpus of the trust, so it doesn't come from, earning money, but then you're taking it out. So the city's been paying those costs, and we have that going into next year too.
So just to conclude, the city's budget is a $13 million budget, and this is a balanced budget. It's a decrease of $5.6 million from the 2024 budget, and this is primarily due to the capital expenditures being moved to the Capital Reserve Fund, as we've talked about, and a decrease in the pension MMOs. Project management. This is the first year we're adding this slide. We started off having one project manager. Now we have two project managers, one down at DPW, one in the BA's office. We also have the two ARPA individuals doing project management. A significant amount of work goes on in that office with this very small group. They're doing a phenomenal job. We talked during the parks presentation of the parks projects. There's 17 parks projects in various states of completion in the city. It's actually $18 million worth of projects in our city parks. This department is managing the conversion over to the third party doing pave cuts. I know on your agenda tonight will be an update to the ordinance to look at doing pave cuts with the third party administrator. We're looking to have this kick off in January. Streetscaping. The city is investing over $18 million in streetscaping projects. We anticipate the first of these to be let over the winter this year. Most of these are right at PennDOT at this point, under evaluation. PennDOT came back with comments, and Riley Associates, who's doing the majority of the projects except for Cedar Ave, is in the process of responding with the comments. Stormwater projects, we have had numerous public meetings and discussed this. The city has actually invested $32 million in stormwater in the city. $23 million came from ARPA. We had FEMA 2018 projects that were done. And we also don't recognize that the city invested city dollars in the post-September 9th flooding in 2023. The city paid to clean the stream banks out after that event. We have 7 bridge projects underway in the city. Now, though these are the responsibility of PennDOT, with the exception of Hollow Ave, the city does have match, and the city participates in the planning process for all of these. City Hall restorations, nearly $5 million project nearing its completion. The remainder of the work left is really, they were putting the rubber roof on today. The remainder of the work left is around the stained glass window replacement. And the last is right to know. So far to date in 2024, we've had 817 right to knows answered by the right to know officer in the BA's office.
So before we move any further there, when it comes to the FEMA and PEMA projects, I had some questions from November 11th. How many of the projects that were listed to be completed were completed? So
All but one is done right now,
Okay.
and that's in process.
Okay, and how many were there in total?
Oh, I don't remember that number off the top of my head. Quite a few.
Okay.
It was quite a few.
Was it about 49? So everything,
I'd have to,
100%
I'm not
of
going to
those?
give you a number. We'll come back and give you a number.
100% of those have been completed except for the last one, and that's in the process right now?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and we will be reimbursed for that total
Yep,
money.
yep.
I don't know, I need the IT guy again.
Next slide.
Yeah, I don't know why it doesn't want to cooperate. There we are. So the project management office, we tallied up all the projects that we are, we've either recently completed, that we have underway or in the process of design. And this group in that office are managing over $90 million worth of projects currently. And, we divided them up into buckets. We talked about the stormwater, the public and the traffic safety. We're talking about the bridges there, all of the streetscapes that we're doing downtown, our parks projects. We're also, under the other category, managing a lot of the ARPA pieces of grants that had gone out to different entities and nonprofits. Those need to be monitored and tracked as time goes by. Next slide. Lastly, some improvements that occurred in the office, implementing power time. We have that in Parks and DPW, moving it on to our friends in code enforcement. As we've talked about before, the opening and the transferring money using the capital spending plan, $3.7 million will be transferred into that. $3 million of that is ARPA interest. The right to knows we talked about. We've instituted the repay system to help with processing payments. We've used that in the ARPA funds. We're now starting to move that into OECD, using it on ESG, eventually home and CDBG funding. We've significantly reduced advertising costs by reframing how we're doing the advertising, and it saved a significant amount of money for the city. This year, we created the 457B plan, which the clerical department and the non-union employees will be able to partake in. This has been a really good tool that other entities have used for attraction and retention of employees. We're currently in the 5-year fiscal plan. Pennsylvania Economy League is working on that for us. We hope to have, in the coming months, have that to council so that we'll be able to take a look at that. And as we've talked about, we talked about it when we were here with the mayor, the hub test is still ongoing and moving through the process of waiting for information from the county to be sent out.
Good evening, Council. Treasury Department. It's made up of myself and 2 full-time union clerical employees. We are the physical custodian of all the monetary assets. We handle all the daily deposits, the bigger ones being single tax office and the county checks, such as real estate transfer, earned income, LST, delinquent business privilege, and mercantile. We get checks. We also, the county started ACH in the money to us, so we make sure it's broken down in the appropriate accounts in the OpenGov system so that it hits the appropriate line items. We also act as a liaison for all the collection entities, being single tax office, port and off, and tax claim bureau. Our phone is constantly ringing most of the time for tax questions, so we have to play basically the middleman to get them to the appropriate places for their answers. This year, we've done 83 refuse exonerations, all being 2023 refuse, with more to come in the upcoming weeks. And at the end of December, we'll start the 2024 exonerations, so it'll pick up drastically. We handle all the Act 98 escrow money, which there's a fire damaged property, and the fire department deems it Act 98 appropriate. We'll reach out to the insurance companies, and we provide tax certifications and also refuse delinquencies to the insurance company so that the appropriate money will be held. And if they do owe the city or county anything, it will be taken out of that so that we do get our money. We also work closely with rental registration. I know it's a big thing last year. A lot of people have been getting billed incorrectly on their bills. So I've worked with Robin from rental, and we actually send a couple inspectors out to houses and shown that if it was a 2, it should be a 1, and we've got that corrected for the upcoming year on the bills. And this year, we've taken on 2020 and prior refuse delinquency, the collections of all the delinquent payments. What we do is we take all the payments, we provide payoff statements to all the title companies, and then once we receive the payments, we satisfy the liens. We took over 150 payments since beginning of August. Once we receive the information for Port Off, there's about 3,900 delinquencies, so there's a bunch, and they go as far back as 2002. A quick overview, I only have one line item, salary. The 2024 is there, and the 2025 is right next to it. 2 union employees are getting their contractual money.
Can we just go back to the BA's office real quick? There's 2 line items here. I just wanted to, just some clarification on. One is 100-44714, 140-140, and it looks like it's Operation TSF Worker CO, and it's going.
Workers' comp?
Say that.
Workers' compensation.
That's what I would imagine. So it's going from 2.6 to 3.9 million dollars. Could you just explain that line item there?
Sure, well,
Yeah, I could do that. That is, well, last year, the one on that Eileen had was $3 million to 3.9 on the slide. Last year, we budgeted 2.6 of that 3 million. That's why you see the 2.6, because we had, at the end of the year, a decent balance in that, about $1 million. So I brought it down a little bit so we didn't have to have that expense, and we were sufficient for the year. But this year, we have, that account has been hit a lot due to the unfortunate incident that happened to Officer Lamar nearly a part of this year. So I'm not predicting as much money in that account at the end of this year. So we're probably going to have to fund the full amount. Now, that 3.9 million comes from labor and industry, and they say this is how much you have to have in your workers' funding account, just like 3 million last year. But this year I had to budget the full 3.9 million because of the decrease in the balance of that account this year. Does that make sense?
It does. Then the other one is professional services. So it's going from 580,000 to 710,000.
right, so do you have the list? So the HUP test is in there, the 5-year fiscal plan is in that bit. We will have, contract negotiations will be under Kaylee's, there's some of the others in there.
Community, what do we got, BA professional?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the HUB test is in there, as Eileen mentioned. The trust.
Yeah, and this is in the BA's office, not in HR professional services. It's just the BA's office professional services.
Right, yeah, the HUB test is in there.
Okay.
The PEL, the financial projections are in there for next year.
PFM.
PFM is in there.
So I think what we need to recognize with the hub test too is when we move forward, if there are entities that we need to, use legal remedies to work forward, that we're going to need to be able to have that funding available to do that.
Yeah.
Mr. Joyce, I have a question. So, refuse exoneration. So, the bills are going up soon. I get calls every year.
Turn your microphone on.
Sorry, I do this all the time. So, the bills are coming out soon for refuse. I get calls every year. You said there was 83 exonerations last year. Is that a low number? I'm saying
They were just done this year for last year.
Okay, so the process remains the same. They still have to utilize the form from 2022, correct? Because I'm going to get a bunch of calls about this. For clarity's sake.
For 2022, yeah.
So they have to fill out the form, they have to wait a year to get the money back, correct?
No. Well,
So have we changed any part of that process?
no, at the end of the year, you can get your money back, unless you're permanently exonerated, or if you own a vacant lot, then you can get it immediately.
So, okay, so I'm glad to hear there's our permanent exonerations.
Right,
Because in the past there wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was a nightmare for
Right.
a lot of people. And so, how many have been permanently exonerated? Just a ballpark, more than 8, more than 10, more than...
In my time here, maybe 2 or 3.
All right, but I'm sure there's more out there. So when someone reaches out to me soon, and hopefully people are watching, they know the process.
Right,
So what
yeah.
would the process be to get total exoneration of the refuse bill? If they're living there 30 years with no one living in the half a double or the duplex upstairs, I mean, the problem that was presented to me was they had a hard time proving that to get the permanent exoneration. Has that process gotten any better?
With the rental registration, yes. I mean, I can say, like, with the uptick in that, we could see exactly, if you register 2 units constantly, we assume you're using both units. But like I said, I've sent out inspectors from LIPS to verify, like, you could tell if a place, or if you have separate meters, that's easy. I know the older homes have 1 meter, so it's kind of hard
Right, yeah,
to do
yeah.
the double.
So with that said, everyone still has to fill out the form.
Correct.
And then for total exoneration, I mean, they don't have to go through all this, showing bills, do they, or gas bills, or light bills,
It would be easier for us if they did.
or the non-existence of them. Or
Correct,
maybe
right.
they're just leaving the heat on because they don't want the pipes to freeze, but no one's lived there for 20 years.
Right, yeah, I mean,
And that's taken into
if
consideration.
it's low usage, or, yeah, I mean, we could tell the difference between somebody living there and,
All right, so
just keeping it.
when I do get these calls, who do I have them call?
you
Your
can call
office?
me, yeah.
All right,
Yeah, and I'll talk to them and figure something out.
thank you. I expect some. A few.
Good evening, Council. I really appreciate your time. So I'll talk a little bit about human resources. So as you can see, we have continued healthcare savings by avoided costs. And this is due to a lot of different things. We have co-pays, deductibles, and probably the biggest thing is that the prescription drugs are now all formulary, so they're different tiered drugs. Before all the contracts were renegotiated, there was no formulary in place for the medications. And we also are starting to implement a lot of cost-saving programs that are out there, that, like, through our TPA, will bring with Highmark, for instance, rehab services, mental health services, all these different things like that help keep the cost down. So it's more of an avoidance than a savings. We had our first workman's comp audit in over 20 years. We passed successfully. They requested a lot of different information. They needed to see our accident and illness prevention plan, our safety policy statement. We had to name a coordinator for the AIPP plan. We instituted a checklist and suggestion box list We do industrial testing, which is testing air quality when it's needed. We implemented a first responders mental health app. We have employee trainings and an emergency action plan. And I think for the next one, we all know the terrible events that happened earlier in the HR department with some employee files. We acted promptly as soon as that happened. It was happened in error, of course, but we did put some new processes in place. We we contracted with a new shredding company, so we basically are having a professional shredders come in and take all the shredding materials out. We updated our record retention policy. We also have removed all the files that aren't active, and we've put them in a separate location, and they are kept under lock and key. The HR staff was re-instructed on how to handle the files. All the cabinets and desks are kept locked when not in use. The desks we have a clean desk policy, so at the end of the day, everybody's desk has to be completely cleaned up and locked up. Anybody coming into the HR office, they have to come in through the visitor's door, and it's a little area that's partitioned off, and someone from my department will, go and help them while they stand in that little area. There's no more like walking around in the HR department. We got some new file cabinets with locks. The doors are locked at the end of every day, and the cleaning personnel has been, they're told only to remove trash. That's the only thing they are to take from the office. We successfully negotiated our clerical contract. Our workman comp's claims continue to decline. The next slide, can we pop over there real quick? So if you look, there is the lost time. Last year it was at 24. This year it was at 14. We have the medical-only claims, which they had to have medical attention, but they weren't out of work, 53. And then the other are just recorded claims, which are people that might have been hurt at work, but no follow-up was required. They're just like incident reports. So even though the expense went up because of our catastrophic member, and that is the workman's comp. And then we also had a 20% increase in liability casual insurance, and the big factor here is because of law enforcement. It's gone up 63% over the last 3 years, and that's like a nationwide insurance increase. Next slide, please. So hopefully for this year, we're going to successfully negotiate the DPW contracts. Safety is really big on this year's agenda. We would like to we have a firm commitment from administration. We're going to be identifying hazards and assessing them and the equipment, continuing with employee training, incident and accident reporting, routine inspections of the equipment by the supervisors, workplace violence prevention plans, and an emergency response plan. So we're constantly updating that. And then also we would like to digitize all the records. We did ask for money for that in the budget, and we also applied for a grant. That's all I have.
So I'll pull double duty. My name is Jeffrey. Right?
Yeah, excuse me, before we move on.
Yep.
So similar questions here. So for the HR department, we see that professional services, last year's budget was $730,000 for professional services. This year it's $878,000. Just some clarification on the increase there.
Well, we're going to have negotiations again, DPW negotiations, and looking through all the different professional services that we pay for it. There's just been a lot. I can get specifics for you if you'd
We
like.
did add
Yeah.
digitization into that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's actually
That's
a
gonna
big
be-
ticket
yeah.
item to digitize.
Okay, do we know what the cost, the average is there?
So we put a
estimate?
grant in, I think we have a grant in for $125,000, but the idea behind that grant is to digitize the mapping because of its odd shape and its difficulty in doing it. We anticipate at least that much or even more because we have pieces in the law department as well as many historic HR records. What Kaylee wants to do is start from current and work backwards.
And work backwards.
Okay, you said at least that much or even more. What was the price? I
It was
didn't-
$125,000 is what we put the grant in for. So
That's just
that-
one piece.
That was just one piece of it that we put the grant in for. And, the driver behind that one was FEMA and the CAV inspection that we had. One of the pieces that FEMA would want was to have our plans digitized, which makes a ton of sense. But what we really want to do is have it in the HR shop as well.
Okay, and then two of the other things, one was education for clerical. It was $20,000, and the safety program, and I think you touched a little bit on that, and that's just,
Well, we're
The
doing
city as
trainings,
a
yeah.
whole?
We're trying to do monthly trainings, and we're picking different topics, and that's like J.J. Keller, which is one of our vendors. It's just educational materials mostly.
okay, all right, thanks.
I just want to say I'm excited about getting to digitize the records, moving into 2025, as the city should be. And I do appreciate the summary that you provided on what changes we've made in our policies for record keeping and making sure that we're keeping those safely. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. My name is Jack Reager. I'm the Director of IT for the city. Tonight, we'll talk a little bit about what we've seen in 2024 and what we're looking at going forward with 2025. I would be remiss if I did not start with the fact that we did have to respond to a cyber event with one of our partners this year. As you know, we collaborate with the school district rather closely. We have SRO officers that utilize our infrastructure. They have technology in the buildings. They're actually issued Scranton School District email addresses, which opens up another layer of exposure. So we were alerted to this by the chief. By about 30 minutes after that, around 10 p.m., we started locking down all of our network devices, all of our infrastructure, and we were able to ensure that our information in our network was left uncompromised. A lot of times in IT, we work through what's called a smoke test when you simulate these types of events to see what's going to happen. What's nice about this is it was an actual event and we did not have any issues at this point in time. And it was a clean bill of health across the board. That speaks to what we do. We're up to 5. The council was recognized the need that we had for a public safety specialist that was added mid-year. We have recently hired that individual. They are now in-house. We have a situation where we try to amplify the hands that we do not have. We attempt to use software. We'll talk about some of our licensing and some of the work that we do. But the reality is we have 12 facilities, 7 firehouses, 500 employees, over 35 operating police vehicles, plus all fire. That's done through our department with 90% in-house work. When you see our professional services in any specialized team that we bring in, it's typically allocated to hanging cameras, people in bucket trucks, some electricity that I don't want these folks touching. So we are in a mode where we only use professional services where we do not have the expertise in-house. I know that the administration has looked at my department for raises this year. One of the things that I always like to remind, besides the capacity of what we do, we are a 24/7 shop, 365 days a year. The police need us, we're there. Fire needs us, we're there. Anybody within the organization needs us, we're there. That's not done on overtime, that's done as part of the work that we do. So when we think about what our folks are doing day to day, the numbers are really staggering. We closed 4,500 tickets year to date. That's individuals from an email password reset to a new vehicle being onboarded by the fleet supervisor down at PD. As we've talked about repeatedly, the technology that's in those devices or in those vehicles is something that not even this group has touched before. We handle all training. So when we think about these new softwares, we talk about the tools that are coming in. My team is teaching the individuals who are actually using the softwares how to use them. There's a little bit of training that also falls under our offices. You've heard a couple times about the VIP visits. What we saw for attempted network intrusions during that time was fascinating at a minimum. When you have an international VIP coming to the city and you start to see the traffic that's attempting to breach our layers of security, it's nice to know that we've had new investment from council to make sure that we have the tools in place to make sure our staff alive is able to stand up in those situations. We're going to wrap up the network resiliency project before the end of the year. Now we're at the point where we can talk about what that actually means. There is a barrier between the police department and the building. It bounces off of the bank towers. The same is unreliable and understatement. Because of the investments we've been able to make either through ARPA funding or through some of our budget over here, we're going to be replacing that top of box. It will happen in the next week, by the way. We lit every firehouse in the state. We haven't had that previously. This allows us to extend our network infrastructure as well as our camera infrastructure, just safe all around. So these are pieces that have been being handled and deployed in a strategic manner in a way that needs to be done. Those fleet upgrades, we talked about new vehicles, we heard about, I know we're going to find more on this year. Thinking about officers and what they need to do with this technology now, we also need to support it to be able to deploy it in an interactive manner. 20 vehicles this year, 5 more next year. They also retrofitted existing vehicles, so it was an interesting activity. When we think about our areas of focus and what we're looking at, especially on network security, endpoint security, that's basically what we see when those machines are exposed to the outside world and what we're able to work with to prevent them from having an issue. We saw more this year than previously that we have aging technology that while we were able to take care of a lot of the desktops and the laptops, we're looking at 25 cameras downtown that have been in place for well over 10 years. Just thinking about the wear and tear on these devices, we'll be going into this budget with setting out as many as we can to ensure that there's no corruption services there. We talked a little bit about the employee training. Fleet uptime, obviously, we need to ensure that when our officers or first responders on the fire side have the technology member there and able to assist them in real time. What we're looking at going into next year as well, we talked about this in a couple of clusters, but software licensing and how that's negotiated. Previously, there seemed to be a trend of just, hitting a sticker. Because of what we do and how we're able to operate as government, or municipality here, we're able to extend those contracts and see savings. So we've taken a little different approach to how we're looking the systems that we really use repeatedly. You see this camera system, you see this basic Microsoft, those types of pieces. Previously, last year when we spoke, I talked about our savings and how we negotiated what we were paying just for our office licenses, which was very close to 6 figures. Those types of changes now, as these contracts have aged out, we're able to approach them differently and see how we're able to save the city as we move forward. Without going into too much depth on this, when we think about what we're doing with our team, the software, you're not going to run any type of organization without a significant investment in software. This is a little bit of a cross-cut for it. Anything from when we're looking at specialized PD systems, the operator devices we use for the detectives and crime scene investigation, back to something as easy as procurement. We went through 149 RFPs through turnout this year. If you go back and think about what did we do before we had that software, you can start seeing the efficiencies that are applied to why we're going through and making these investments. Again, my team supports these schools top to bottom. Last year we talked about the asset controls, and I know Councilman McAndrew has recognized that we really needed one of those asset controls that we had. We got a step further with what is called an MDM. We have the ability to see what's happening out of one of these machines just to ensure that it is safe, it is clean, it is operating as intended, and it has what it needs to have on it. So we've added an additional layer there. We talked about security training and individuals who consistently need to be given best practices, we use that, we'll set there for there was no before that's something that we implemented last year, we're still using this year. I will acknowledge, city staff across the board has a good long way to go to simulate phishing campaigns, clicking on things they shouldn't click on. And this is a tool set that automatically will go through and remind folks what is right and what is wrong. Going through 2024, we did wrap up that network rebuild enhancement. You've heard a lot about Axon. Axon came in sunset as a tool set for Watchdog. It actually added layers of sophistication that the officers in the city have not had previously, so that is implemented and up and running. We completed a number of audits. The most recent is, I believe it's every 3 years, the state police. So they came in and went through all of our systems to ensure that we're not only compliant, but we have checked all of our boxes. We talked about multi-factor authentication. You all work with you're working with your email. That multi-factor authentication is something that's now required by the state. To learn about the number of agencies that don't have this in place, and we've already implemented the due date for this October, they hadn't even started conversations. So we're moving rapidly to put these tools in place and put them in correctly. The public safety cameras, we added an additional 25 cameras this year. The LPRs, the license plate readers, we went from 2 to 17. We will continue to invest in those as the chief sort of sees what that fits into the strategy. There's been the multiple system upgrades across the fleet. There were some GPS pieces that needed to get ironed out with new software, so that was taken care of. One of the other interesting things, for a long time, if you were in a patrol vehicle, you had a couple things that were basically wired into that laptop hanging out. One of which was the scanner. That scanner, when you hear back from some of the officers, wasn't kind of funky. Think about it, you're sort of like a doctor, you're scanning stuff. That's what they had. So we worked through putting integrated scanners into all the vehicles. So all the active cars, we've got 35, we did a lot of scan of the driver's license here, all that data in real time. So that was part of our update this year. The addition of the public safety specialist we chatted about, the firehouse component and adding those 7 firehouses to the network. That was something that wasn't previously done. The housing counts that the firehouses had their technology. What the city didn't have was a little more of a presence to allow us to sort of extend what the city does in the network. These are individuals that need the same level of support. They have even more sophisticated systems than they did 5 years ago. We needed to ensure that they have that technology in place and they're able to work with it. I'll tie back to that and it will show a budget increase. We're going to finish the replacement of the phone system. That's been something that's been nagging on me since I got here. It's a little bit of a mess. Aging technology. Each of the cameras operates what's called an archiver. That archiver is, I'm going to oversimplify, but it's a giant DVR. We have 7 of them throughout the city. They are all 10 years old. You can think about the amount of cameras, the amount of footage we've gone through, we've invested, we've made the order, we will do the integration this year, and we'll upgrade that top to bottom in-house. We will be focusing on the downtown public safety camera systems. We have 5 additional SD vehicles arriving. We have additional network enhancements that need to be wrapped up. The continued education and best practices. We're doing a massive update. This is the end of where we were looking to deploy ARPA funds. For users on the PD side, fire side, and the city side, we work with 2 large shared drives. If it's work by, hard drive, think of it that way. We're looking at $250,000 of investment to update that hardware. That hardware is over 15 years old, and everything is on it. So we're going through and making that purchase. Thankfully, we are able to leverage those types of dollars to do this. I don't know where that would fit in my budget on year to year. So the fact that we're able to get a little bit ahead and plan out some of this like cycle management technology is going to win the ball for us. Today we talked about document digitization, we'll support that as that goes through. And we talked loosely about entry and the concept of how you guys are going to be leveraging the city. You'll see more of this. We talked about the file reporter. We have DPW on the daily using different tools to identify if it's like a home robbery, if it's something that needs attention in terms of stormwater. This is all GPS allocated technology that we previously didn't have access to and now we do. In terms of my budget highlights and what we're looking at IT, we talked about the salary component, what you're seeing, and I know Mr. Wallace mentioned this in one meeting, we saw a large increase in telephone. become an employee of the city, and we look forward to the next year's season competition. But as it stands today, Compact is our only game in town. So as they raise rates, the residents, we feel the same thing. So that's where that large increase is from. The other one you'll see is software and licensing. Software and licensing, as we work through these budgets, we've been consolidating items where it makes the most sense. Having different departments pay for software or licensing outside of IT does not make a lot of sense. So you'll see Domines is pulled in for us. We have Tyler, who's our tax provider, with PhD, coming into IT. So that's why you see a significant increase on that side as well. At this point, if there's any questions.
So, Mr. Reager, when you bring that up, so Ptolemy was with code enforcement, Rubicon's with DPW. Previously, so last year's budget, were they listed in professional services of those departments?
Actually, you know that, I believe they were professional services, they were not software and licensing down there.
So all of those fell in those respective departments? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I know it was brought up when DPW was here a couple days ago about the cost of Rubicon moving forward. Do you know what that cost is?
The simple answer is it's going to be range that you use the negotiating. The conversation we had last week was the reality is they did not, they did not hit all of our marks, so it's going to be a conversation around how much we're willing to take that software. We are going to invest in software, we will renew. The list price year over year is 40. My job to make sure we come under that.
Okay, sounds good.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for the time today. I appreciate being here. So relative to the city's law department, we've had a very strong year for 2024. We currently on the books have 20 active defense suits that we're managing, which is relatively consistent with last year's caseload. In prior years, however, for context, we would routinely exceed 30 cases or more. Of our current active cases, proportionally, we have seen an uptick relative to law enforcement liability claims, which, if you recall from my presentation last year, was anticipated and we were prepared to handle that. We continue to take a tailored approach to handling each and every case, and we defend or attempt to amicably resolve cases where appropriate. This approach has paid off. We've won or had dismissed 12 cases throughout the year this year and favorably settled 3. We have not received an adverse ruling year to date, so that's probably the most important number that's not up on the board. But our track record has been stellar. You'll recall that in the city's recent past, we've been bogged down with several lawsuits challenging the validity of our taxes and fees or seeking to further strain our pension funds. This really played a part in the city's financial uncertainty. But as we discussed last year, largely those matters are now behind us, which has improved our financial stability and credit rating as a result. The last suit that was on our books that could have upended our financial progress was a suit filed by certain retirees seeking reinstatement of cost of living adjustments on their pension funds. I'm happy to report that in the early part of this year, we were successful in that case and we won. So that's not an exposure that the city will need to brace for financially. So what we're experiencing now generally is smaller scale, more routine litigation. It really has allowed us, by cleaning up all of those old cases, we've been able to pivot to more proactive legal involvement on the city's behalf. As you'll recall, we formally involved ourselves and were a party to the rate increase that was before the Pennsylvania Utility Commission by PAWC, Pennsylvania American Water, which resulted in the rates being decreased that would burden our tax base. Additionally, we've sought a number of injunctions relative to blight to help improve our neighborhoods, which we're pleased to have been able to have the capacity to involve ourselves with that. In addition to litigation-related work, we continue to produce more legislation than many of our counterparts, In-house, we've authored over 220 pieces this past year, and I appreciate your patience and passage of all of those items. And year-to-date, we've prepared over 60 contracts. Taking, again, a proactive approach, we've been able to craft policy to implement reform for the betterment of the city. Items such as the towing policy and practices, the pave cut permitting process that's before you, the parking regulations that the city adopted for the first time, and being able to finally clean up the code with some outdated provisions, which we received council support on and was appreciated. We've also been involved in assisting in the contract phase of the multitude of projects that Eileen highlighted for you earlier. And that was all guided by and through the city's first procurement guide, which brings clarity, transparency, openness to the procurement process, which I think is something that the city was sorely in need of for many years. So how is all of this reflected in the city's budget? As you can see, we're proposing a slight increase in the overall budget, but it's nominal, it's $9,400. That is largely the result of nominal increases for dues and subscriptions, training, expenses related to continuing legal education requirements, and legal research software. We also plan to expand the use of Granicus that we utilize for boards, commissions, and authorities, so they have easy access to that tool for greater efficiency as well. These increases are largely absorbed by a decrease in professional services. So we're proposing to decrease professional services overall by $50,000. So down from $300 in this year to $250. Added to that savings that we're proposing, we're also proposing a decrease in court awards of $100,000. This is possible because our litigation experience is becoming smaller, both in volume and in the magnitude of cases that we're seeing as far as the dollar amount that's potentially at stake. In short, to reiterate, for the second year in a row, we are proposing an overall decrease in the legal impact on the budget by $132,000, which I'm very proud to present to you today. And I think this is in large part due to us investing in positions that pay for themselves. So I know that oftentimes a focal point and an area of sensitivity is salary adjustments. So I wanted to provide you with some further clarity, some explanation and detail behind the adjustments that were sought. Beyond what was included in the formal budget proposal, we in the law department did a more expansive analysis of comparables from peer municipalities. We looked at Allentown, Bethlehem, Erie, Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, Reading, Wilkes-Barre, and York. And what I found was that we were significantly underfunded. You can see some of the comparable numbers up there, the percentages by which we're underfunded. In truth, we're starting to feel the effects of not funding these positions appropriately. We were able to attract a very talented full-time solicitor last year who specialized in litigation management and in-house litigation defense. But they've since left the city for a position with a much higher salary, one that we simply could not begin to compete with. We've had the position posted since August on a number of platforms. I've received some applications. Of the qualified candidates that I did connect with, that I was able to speak to, all declined because they could not simply take the pay cut or justify the salary for the work involved. Unfortunately, my big goal has been to craft, my vision for the law department was to rely less on outside counsel at excessively high billable rates and to bring that work in-house to really generate that cost savings. And we've seen over the past first half of this year that model is working. You've seen the numbers. We're asking for $132,000 less than we have the year before. And I think we need to continue on that track record of investing to avoid costly outside expense. So in conclusion, I just want to again reiterate, we're overall impacting the budget by $132,000 less than last year. This is achieved through reduction in reliance on outside counsel through professional services and in costly awards or settlements through the court awards line item. It's because of the diligent handling of litigation and the investment in staff that you all have been supportive of in the past, and I want to continue down that track record. And I think, you know, just to close on the fact that we have seen in my 9 years here a significant drop in litigation, a significant drop in the potential financial exposure of the cases that do come forward. I think that's indicative of the city's overall health, both financially and operationally. In my time, you know, I think we can see that there's a clear nexus between the litigation that's brought and the overall stability and the operations of the city. I think there's a clear sign here. The numbers are proving my point that the leadership here, everyone at this table, all of the other department heads are doing their job, and they're doing it really well in a way that's not increasing exposure to the city. So I want to commend my fellow cabinet members, the mayor, our team internally on down, because we can see in real dollars and cents how what we're doing is really paying off.
Thank you. Council members have any questions?
So when it comes to the $132,372.94, the decrease you stated was around 9,200, something like that, and then the rest comes from court awards. Is that what I heard?
Correct. So the overall city budget itself, the law department provision of the budget is increasing by 9,400 approximately. But when you factor in the additional savings from dropping down the court awards, that's where you get that larger figure from.
Okay, thanks.
Real good. Thank you for coming, giving us the information on all of your budgets. Thank you.
I was just going to have one little clue, if you have a moment.
Sure, go ahead.
So in closing, the city has continued to monitor and manage its fiscal health. One of our administration's highlights this past year occurred when the credit rating agency S&P increased the Scranton's triple bond rating, triple B minus rating, to 2 notches to triple B plus with a positive outlook. That means that S&P will continue to look at the city to possibly raise our rating again in the next 2 years. The administration continues to improve our processes, increase efficiency, transparency, and operate with a high degree of professionalism. You've heard it here with all the directors here tonight. You heard it the last 2 weeks when we had our public safety members in here and when the mayor was here. We remain good fiscal stewards of the city's funding, being recognized last year with the Governor's Award for Fiscal Accountability and Best Management Practices. You've heard from the mayor and all the departments over the past 3 weeks. We've talked about what good stewardship means to the city. It means no tax increase, no TRAN, no refuse increase, $90 million in project management, $1.5 million in investing in police technology and equipment, 5 new police officers, interagency partnerships, $1 million invested in fire equipment, state-of-the-art firehouse reporting system, housing inspectors on the weekend, investment in blight remediation, over $25 million in state and federal grant awards to the city in the last 4 years, millions of dollars invested in 17 parks, tens of millions invested in stormwater management throughout the city, reimagining the downtown with $18 million of investment in streetscapes, challenging the Pennsylvania American Water Company rate increase successfully, resolving legacy litigation, keeping our network secure, police and IT technology safety upgrades. We're proud of all that the city team has done, whether it's a department director, a frontline supervisor, police officer, any of our staff from top to bottom. The city works hard for all the residents every day to improve the city, to be good stewards of your money and to keep people safe. We continue to make a positive change. We respectfully ask council to continue to invest in our city employees so we can continue to do the good work of the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.